So today I'll be demonstrating how to replace a Dynamixel servo from the tomfoolery puppet. The one I will be doing as an example is for mouth open close, which is located in Tom's head. The other two servos that are in his body are for the functions head tilt and head turn, which are located in Tom's torso. I would say for all of these servos to be replaced, that Tom's foam body will have to be taken off of his mechanism to be able to do this. The head you might be able to do with his foam body still on it, but definitely for his two head functions, the foam body will have to come off to get into those areas. So let's start with replacing this. The first step is to make sure that everything is powered off of Tom. You don't want to be working on Tom when he has anything connected to him. The next step is we're going to take off the part that is powering him mechanically. So it's this little white notch here that we're just going to disconnect. You can just do that through pulling. These little connectors. Okay, we're in. So for all of these servos, they have their Dynamixel brand horn, which is this gold piece behind here that comes with it. And then they have this custom horn that I made and designed with these button head screws attached to it. Because of the way that we are delivering this to Give Kids the World, you do not need to remove this custom horn from the Dynamixel horn. So you can keep all these button heads in here and you don't have to touch them. So the next step for this is that to take off this servo is we are going to remove this set screw, which will allow us to wedge the servo off, the servo horn off the servo. So I'm using a 3/32 hex key for this set screw here. And we are just gonna turn this on. Okay, done. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to wedge this servo horn off the servo. Something else to note is that you want to use this servo horn servo for the new servo that you are going to be replacing this with. So the only thing that we are really replacing is just the servo itself. The old horn is going to go into the new servo. So next you want to use just a little flathead screwdriver or anything you can use, because we're just going to gradually wedge the servo horn off the servo. So we're going to use this and use mechanical advantage to be able to wedge it off. What you want to do is you want to be really gentle, because you don't want to tear up the servo horn too much or the casing that is on the servo itself. So we're just going to be real careful, and we're going to go around and we're just going to wedge it off the spline. Should only take just be real gentle. Okay, and we're off. Something else that will be on the servo is this metal gasket. So you want to keep this metal gasket, and you're going to keep this servo horn mounted to the custom arm. And then our last step to take this servo off is we are going to use the metric hex key, and we're going to take off these screws. And then this servo is also mounted to a specially made for a Dynamixel servo mount. That mount can stay on the mechanism itself. The mount does not need to come off. Okay, So we've got our 2 metric screws off, and now the servo is totally ready to just be taken off, like this.
To replace, change the ID of the DynamicSel, you need 4 things: the U2D2, the power adapter to 4-pin converter, the DynamicSel power supply, and finally a micro USB cable. You take the micro USB cable and connect it to the U2D2. You take the power supply and connect it to the 4-pin converter. You take the power supply and connect it to the main power. Now you take the power supply and pin from the power supply and connect it. Make sure when you connect it, there should be a red light blinking. This means that it's connected. It performed a power on self test and it ran good. You connect the signal cable on the other end. Make sure you have both the ends connected. Now you take the USB end and connect it to the PC. Pause. When you connect the USB cable from the DynamicSel to the PC, click on RoboPlus software, click on Export, and then click on DynamicSel Wizard. This will open this window. By default, COM port 1 will be selected. Select COM 6 or COM 3, whichever pops up, and then click on Open Port. Then select all of these and then select Start Searching. This will take some time as it goes and searches all the different IDs. We'll wait for it. As soon as this shows up, you can click on Stop Searching because it has found it. In case it doesn't find it, you can select the other port and repeat the procedure. Now, click on ID2, the lowest hierarchy. Do not click on MX actuator. Do not click on MX actuator, but on ID2. Here, you need to change the ID to the one you are changing. For example, mouth DynamicSel will have the ID 1. You can scroll down and select and then hit apply. You also need to change certain different values. For example, CW angle limit, CCW angle limit, move speed and torque limit. All of this will be different for different DynamicSel, and you can refer the documentation for more information. If you want to test whether your DynamicSel is moving or not and test the limit, you can use this. This will move the DynamicSel to the position it is set to. If there are limits, it's gonna round it off to the nearest number. Once you are done, you can close the port and disconnect power and then remove the DynamicSel and put it back into TOM.
So now that you have your new servo loaded with the proper software that we gave to Give Kids the World, we are going to now mechanically put it on. So the first step for head or for the mouth open close, you can choose to do it one of two ways. You can either choose to mount the servo here first, or you could choose to put the arm on first with the horn and then mount it. For mouth open close, that is totally up to you. I believe for head turn, you also have the option of, do you want to mount the servo first or the arm? For head tilt specifically, you have to mount the arm first and then mount the servo onto the plate and put those screws in. So let's get started with putting these screws in. So you want to line it up. So this mount should be on the back half of the servo. And then you're going to use your 2 metric screws, the M2.5s. Okay, so now that the servo is physically mounted onto Tom, we are going to put this, the horn back onto the spline. So first thing, we're going to put that metal gasket back on. Keep that there. And then now this is the really important part of putting this back on. The reason that you do not need to do any calibration and you're able to just use the old software from the old servo onto the new servo is because of this step here. So what you'll be able to see is there's a little notch on the spline of the servo, and what you want that to do is match up with this notch that is on the Dynamixel servo horn. So I'm going to line up those 2 notches and then make sure they're lined up and then pop it on. And then after that, going to put my set screw back in and use the 3/32 Allen key. And the very last step is to take the connector that has all the electrical wiring and connect it back to the new Dynamixel servo up here. So you just want to slide that in. Wait for it to snap. And you're good. You're finished. And that's how you replace a Dynamixel servo. The same protocol can be followed for both the head tilt and head turn servo as well. Thank you.